Christianity, the Bible, social justice, DEI, and wokeness. How are people today supposed to think about these topics? In 2020, the effects of critical race theory peaked when violent riots destroyed many American cities. What should Christians and well-intentioned people make of all these things? Or what about politics and governments forcing people to take vaccines? Can these things be thought about and critiqued in a robust and Christian way? My guest, John Harris, has a lot of experience arguing against social justice from a Christian perspective. He is the host of the Conversation That Matters podcast. His podcast delves into Christian, traditional, and masculine views on theology, culture, and politics. It critiques social justice, CRT, and liberal theology's impact on Christianity. He also is the author of several books, including Social Justice Goes to Church, Against the Waves, and a workbook for small groups called Christianity and Social Justice. Today, we are going to dive into the topics of Christianity, social justice, and where things sit today. It's time to reassess. John Harris, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Matthew.
So I first encountered you in 2020, and what I distinctly remember from watching some of your videos on YouTube and where you were posting a lot of your content was that you were one of the only voices that was really taking on the social justice movement from a Christian perspective. And I thought that was, man, there was really nobody else that I can think of. How did that all start for you?
Well, I was in seminary. I have a little bit of an unconventional seminary background because I didn't go the straight 3 years sequentially. Most seminary students, though, that I've talked to don't do that. But I was in seminary in 2014 at Southeastern, and I took a break, and I came back in 2017, and the seminary had changed so much, and there was some wokeness. We didn't know it by that name in 2014, but in 2017, it was influencing everything. It was just all over campus in about every conceivable way. So this concerned me, and I thought that this was only unique to my seminary. And I decided, after long story short, some counsel and prayer, that I would let people know what was actually happening there, because they didn't market what they were actually doing to students who were coming in. They didn't really want donors to know. I knew someone who was a member of the Southeastern Society, which is the donor group there. And he was telling me what they were telling them. And it was not honest. It was not, they tried to navigate some of the diversity stuff, but I'll just put it this way. They were being, I think, duplicitous about it. And I finally decided that if the professors and the administration wasn't going to do anything about any of this, then I would say something. And so I tried to go through proper channels and just got shut down. So I decided to make a video, and that was in January of 2019. And it went viral, and I had people from all over, especially the Southern Baptist Convention, reaching out to me and saying, it's happening here, it's happening here, it's happening here. Keep talking. I can't talk. I'll get fired. You keep talking. And this kind of scared me because I thought it was unique potentially to my seminary, but then I realized this was everywhere. And I started focusing on it more. And I was in grad school at the time, getting another master's in history. And so I shifted my focus to social justice and how it made its way into evangelical circles. And then 2020 happened, and sort of the rest is history. People were looking for answers for someone who had thought through this from a Christian perspective. And as you observed, I was one of the few people out there that was already writing and talking about it.
Yeah. I read a book by David Platt called Before You Vote.
Yeah.
And this was right before the 2020 election. And I was living in the DC area at the time and had previously been connected to a McLean church, a satellite campus. And at the time, I thought it was a great resource. But I had read the book, and there were certain themes that were kind of jumping out at me and things that made me uncomfortable, but I didn't feel like I had enough courage to like call out some of the things I was seeing and then I stumbled upon one of your videos where you critiqued that book, and I was just like, man, I'm not completely crazy for, disagreeing with David Platt.
Right. Yeah.
And where do you see wokeness now? And like, has it declined? Have there been gains made against it, or like, is it on life support? Where do you see it?
It's still there. It's still drilling down into various institutions. There's obviously uh, companies and institutions getting rid of their DEI policies, but I don't. Some of this may be symbolic. Some of this may be genuine. I don't think the dust has settled yet for us to really know exactly what's going on. You have a new administration that's pretty aggressively against this stuff, at least most of it, and I think that that's going to influence what institutions that want to be in their good graces do, or at least not incur any kind of negative reaction from them. So I would say it remains to be seen to some extent. But I've said before, look, if I don't think it's ever completely gone until some of the damage that was done is undone, and or at least significant strides are made, and you can see that there are some strides being made, but things like the way that history is taught. I mean, we've lost hundreds of monuments. I don't think anyone's putting them back up. There's sort of some symbolic overtures, like, and some of them are real. Like Trump, for example, trying to rename like Mount Denali, Mount McKinley. I don't, the Gulf of America thing, I think was sort of about that, was trying to just say we're proud of who we are. That wasn't really undoing anything. That was more doing something extra, I suppose. But renaming a few of these forts that have changed their names. But even in that, I've noticed like they're trying to, like Fort Bragg, they're using a different Bragg, so it's not really. There is an accommodation to wokeness going on even in that. So it's a mixed bag. I can't really give you a definitive answer on what's happening. I do hear podcasters say something like the woke era is over, it's done. And I'm just like, that's you're it's a nice thought. It's good to you want to think that way, but I don't think that's accurate at all. And the guys who really went hard woke are, it's based on social media. They're as hard woke as ever. Some of the Christians who went really hard woke they're not backing down from any of it. They're still going full speed. Some of them were more overt, even last election cycle for Kamala Harris. And there's guys who are caught in the middle, and I focused on a lot of them. So I should probably put names with some of these. David Platt is someone who I think went pretty much woke, and Mike Kelsey at his church. Mike Kelsey hasn't backed down from that stuff. David Platt's never retracted anything. J.D. Greer has never really retracted anything. He's trying to frame things like he's not as egregious as he was, but I don't see any real repentance and shifting to take responsibility and to argue against what they previously taught. So it's hard for me to say like, oh, it's over. If it was over, they would be trying to go the opposite direction, and they're not. So what we may end up, I mean, I'm not saying this, I'm not a prophet, but what we may end up seeing is like, once Trump or if Vance gets elected, once they get out of there, you could see all of this coming right back into the forefront. And my wife is convinced, because her Facebook feed is a little different than mine. She's got friends from Bible school that have all deconstructed and gone woke and all of this, and she's like, they're just as bad. They're worse than ever. They're right now, and like they're the resistance, in the Trump administration. So during the Trump administration. So if we're not vigilant, this will blow back in ways that we've seen before. It'll be strong, and I am concerned about guys who just get sort of lethargic about it and think like, oh, Trump's in, it's all gone. Like that's not true. It's still there. Those people didn't just all go away.
Yeah, you wonder from like a battle perspective, like is the wokeness sort of just hunkering down They're winterizing their camps just to sort of get through this season, and then they can just kind of come right back. That's one thing I've thought of, like, because you're right, like there has been no real repentance, there has been no real walking anything back, and so they might just be waiting because they know it's not politically convenient right now.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Winterizing their camp. Yeah, I think so. They know that the person in the White House right now and running the government is probably going to target them if they have any influence and they go super hard woke, and no one really wants that. So I see a lot of guys too trying to, who critique wokeness or social justice from a very liberal mindset, which that was probably the primary critique. I was one of the few people that wasn't critiquing it from that mindset, sort of like a neutralist, multiculturalist frame. That, the problem with wokeness is that it favors certain groups over others, and we want a neutral society where no groups are favored. Some of those guys are very strong right now, and trying to, I don't know if there's, I mean, the way they interpret the Trump win is it was like a victory for liberalism over social justice. James Lindsay is probably one of the big leaders of that. And so right now I see what they're doing kind of in trying to stamp out conservatives, because they're saying that the problem now is woke right. It's not really woke. It's now this new conservative hybrid with wokeness. It's the funniest thing to me because it just lacks so much awareness to even make that claim. But they're now going down and hunting conservatives, and they sound about as like they sound very much like the woke people from a few years ago, like the way they're going about it, the accusations they're making, and so I'm kind of like, a lot of these things, a lot of these ideologies can tend to take on different forms, and in people who are very deracinated and open to ideology, I think of it this way: like they have a hardware that can only run one kind of software. They can only run ideology. And they've been so cut off from what their past, their tradition, their religion, all of the things that confer identity. And so they're looking around for things to make their life make sense and worth it. And wokeness and wokeness kind of sprung out of liberalism. They're both ideological, and so they're both threats. And I could definitely see like a shot in the arm given to liberalism in this Trump era, where they'll claim they're not woke, but like a lot of the things they're doing is achieving some of the goals that social justice advocates wanted from a few years ago.
Yeah. What do you think right now is happening with young people? Because, like, for example, I work in a high school where you're sort of seeing a little bit of a tick in the other direction, where I'm seeing like high school students, and this is a public high school, by the way. Kids are throwing around words like trad wives.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it would actually ever penetrate that level. I thought it was just like a thing on social media, and most Gen Zers are not on X or Twitter. And so I'm like, how did they hear about that? And a lot of the typical things that, high school age kids are focused on, there seems to, like, they're not obsessed as much with gender ideology. Like, what I'm noticing is that there's sort of like a rejection of it, and they're actually having a lot of courage to celebrate certain civic victories. They're going against their teachers in some ways. They're sort of tired.
Yeah.
Again, not all of them, but it is really interesting to see.
Well, I know some of the polling on Gen Z. This is from a few years ago, so maybe things have changed a little. But like the young men are super right wing, the young women are super left wing, and so Gen Z. Like there's a guy I know who's he's Gen Z. This a few years ago, but I remember he went from like Andrew Tate is right about everything to I think I'm gay, in the matter of weeks. And it's like, and that's like in my mind what describes Gen Z. Like that's an example of Gen Z. Like they're very deracinated, meaning they're cut off from their past, from the things that confer identity. They live in unstable homes a lot of the time, move around, don't really have allegiance to a community, a place. a home, a country. And I mean, there was polling done when Russia first went into Ukraine. And what if Russia attacked the United States? And Gen Z was, the vast majority of them did not want to defend the United States. They wouldn't fight for the United States. Um, and does that mean they're not conservative or liberal? I think we have to look at this from a different perspective. Like, we're very used to a right-left paradigm. And really, it makes sense in a certain respect if you think of left as like egalitarian utopians and the right as the guardians of kind of a natural order that's mediated through the traditions that we've been given. But what's happened, I think, with Gen Z is the right pole, if you will, has been so eroded. It doesn't really exist for them. All they see, I think, is one pole. They see the left's utopian vision. They know it's bad for them, at least young men. They know that they're the villains, especially if they're white men, of the story, and they want to be transgressive, and that's what the spirit I see more than anything else in that generation. They're transgressive, and they want to violate the standards of the left, and so this is a good thing. There's an opportunity actually here, I think, for Christians if they would actually see it, but it also creates opportunity for other groups that are vying for competition on, we're the ones that violate the left standards more. We'll advocate for you more. Our ideology is, better for you. And so this is where you get young Gen Z guys who, get obsessed with Hitler and just you get really stuck on the Jewish question and these kinds of things. They're very ideological. And like I said before, I mean, I think if your hardware only runs ideology, then it's very easy to switch sides. You're kind of malleable. So they're responding to something real. They're responding to a threat, and the hope is that enough of them are thinking through this that they're actually they're embracing that right wing pole, if you will, of an ordered liberty that is mediated through tradition and so forth. But my suspicion is a lot of them are just transgressing the left without really much of a positive vision for themselves. And because a lot of these attempts to create a positive vision, the trad wife thing, even some of like the white nationalist stuff, it's more of a cartoon in my mind. It only exists in relation to the left standard. It owes its entire existence to the fact that the left has stripped them of any identity and heritage. So it kind of remains to be seen what's going to happen with all that. But I do think like there's sort of some like fascistic ideological elements at play. There's probably some genuine conservative elements at play here and there. There's interest in traditional church liturgies and so forth. There's an article in the New York Post about young men going to Eastern Orthodoxy last December. All of these things, though, have one thing in common, which is that they're against the left. They know that the left is bad. So again, the dust hasn't settled. I don't know exactly how this is all going to shape up. I'm sure you're seeing it in the classroom. But you have, if you look at left and right that way, it makes sense. Most people don't, though. I don't think most people, when they talk about left and right, especially from a liberal perspective, which is the people you hear talking about this, they're thinking of like liberty versus totalitarianism or something like that, or like big government, small government. They see, woke as left, and they think that the right is liberal or something. And like none of those paradigms will help you make sense of what's going on right now. I think you have to look at it like this. You live in a land that has been stripped of everything that normally would produce stability in a society. And they've only been given one thing, and that's a sort of this equality instinct. And all of life is subsumed by this purpose. And so people who go on that train and find out the destination is terrible are rejecting it. And it remains to be seen where they actually end up.
Yeah. I was reading a book have you ever heard of Neil Postman?
Yeah.
Reading a book that he wrote talking about education in America, and, what he saw back in like the 80s, man, it's just only like even more true today. But there is no little lowercase God, like lowercase g God in schools today. So therefore, there's no transcendent narrative to like why everyone's there. And so you have just a lot of different randomness, and kids are kind of swaying. They're having these heavy swings, kind of like the one you mentioned just a second ago, because there's no solid ground for them to stand on. And the schools haven't really helped at all with that. And they're designed at this point not to. And I think there is an opportunity to give them something. And I think you have in Christianity one side that sees that opportunity, and then there's one side that doesn't. So what do you think? Like, you have a lot of the post mills, right? Like, you have like the guy, kind of like the guys in Ogden, the Joel Webbins, and like that side, which is sort of emerging, and then like the pre-existing circles. And so, like, what is your view on all that? Like, are you optimistic in that sense, or do you think the church is kind of let this opportunity sort of slide?
Well, the church as a whole right now is leaderless, essentially. There's not really anyone to fill the shoes of the big legacy ministries. John MacArthur is on his last round. There's no one waiting in the wings that's going to be able to fill his shoes. There's guys, I'm sure, at the seminary and at his church who would love to take the pulpit and do what he does, but there's just no one of that stature that's waiting in the wings. The boomer generation is kind of like, once they pass, this is kind of the typical boomer thing, I suppose, but there's really no one that they've raised up to be able to take the reins of what they've built. And so, yeah, I mean, your legacy ministries are kind of aging out, and it has left, especially with the internet and the new forms of connecting people to each other, this has left an open space for any guys, really, who have a microphone. I'm one of these guys in a way, even though I'm not a pastor, and I made it pretty clear I'm not trying to. I'm more supplemental. I'm not trying to build like an empire or anything like that. I just really want people to understand some of the threats that are opposing them in their lives and communities. But there have been obviously guys who have found this, who are they're using the strategy of using podcasts and using these outlets to try to reach people from the audiences of these legacy ministries who may be disenchanted or, whatever the case may be, maybe just even normal guys who can't support these ministries forever because they're not going to be around. I think a lot of them are going to be like sort of like Ligonier, R.C. Sproul's ministry. Like, he died, I think, in 2017. So he was one of the first kind of boomers to with a legacy ministry like that. And they still do these conferences, but that's about all they do. And someone's going to be mad at me because they think they do. They put out like, they still put out some literature, and they have a website with articles and stuff. But like, my point is, like, no one really reads that stuff much anymore. Like, without R.C. Sproul there, it's just not going to continue the way it was at all. It relies on other legacy ministries to make it kind of continue to exist. And so I think a lot of the other ones are like, even Moscow, Idaho, like John MacArthur's ministry. It's the same way. G3 kind of like relies on these legacy ministries to make their conference work. I think that whole thing is going to either look very different, or it's going to come to an end, at least as we know it. T4G is another example of one that just kind of shut down. Like, they can't really do the conferences anymore. They can't generate the interest. Gospel Coalition is kind of like an older millennial thing. You don't have Gen Zs going to their conferences at all. So it really remains to be seen what happens with the future of Christianity. I do know this, that God obviously is going to make sure that his church prevails, and they're going to continue whatever form that takes. And there's some guys who are trying to be brave and virtuous and seize the moment, so as to speak. But we're in such early stages at this point. it's hard for me to tell you like where this all lines up and what it's going to look like. I definitely have my concerns with kind of this vacuum. The church, I'll give you one example of what I'm talking about. Like John MacArthur, what was he known for? What did he do? He was known for expository preaching. He was known for giving the Bible to people. And I know, obviously, I do podcasts, so I think there's a place for that. But if I were to become a pastor, which I've seriously considered, it would change a lot of what I do. I mean, there would be a focus on the Bible, right? And this is the kind of thing, I understand we need a lot of supplements right now because of things we believe that were wrong for so many years and so forth. But who's the guy that's going to come in and start preaching the Bible expositorily, so people understand what the Word of God actually says to them? I don't see a lot of that with like that space. I think is still waiting to be filled. There's local guys that do this kind of thing and are known for that, but so I have my concerns, or my, I'm looking and seeing this is something that needs to happen, and I don't see prominent figures who have stepped up to do it. But it doesn't mean God's not going to identify people that can do that kind of thing. So I guess the long and short of it is I am cautiously optimistic. I think there's great opportunity. It's like with the Gen Zs, though. There's great opportunity, but it remains to be seen. Like, are there going to be leaders who actually rise up and seize the moment in the way that it needs to be to actually lead the church through the times ahead?
Do you think the internet will be required for that to take place? Like, people are so glued to their phones.
Yeah.
It's like, how is something going to gain momentum or stature, whether it be like, a man, a preacher sort of, coming in and filling the shoes of one of these super influential preachers is it going to have to be somebody who's sort of internet savvy?
Well, I mean, you don't have to be internet savvy yourself. You can have a team that can record you. I mean, John MacArthur wasn't radio savvy. He just had people record him and start putting his sermons on the radio, and that's how he got big. So I think you just need to be faithful, honestly. You need to be faithful in what the Lord has given you. And if he gives you a knack for that, that's great. But the concern I have with so when I see pastors who want to make a difference, this isn't just pastors, this is like anyone. They often tell me, like, John, I'm going to really make a difference. I'm going to start a podcast. And that's a noble thing in many ways. I have a podcast. I'm not against podcasting. Obviously, we're talking on a podcast. For a pastor, though, especially, the thing that makes me nervous is there can be an imbalance where you start marketing everything to a radio or a podcast internet audience. And if you are a local pastor, it's your people who are your primary audience. And I mean, that's what John MacArthur did. His people are his primary audience, and you get to listen in. And so if you're doing the same thing on the internet, that should really be the goal. The internet, though, presents all kinds of things that go beyond radio. I mean, it's really image driven. You gotta now with AI. I mean, you have to, if you're going to compete with other guys trying to do the same thing, then you have to make sure you have all the shorts and everything else. Which is that's something I've kind of like I've become so. Like, I don't like putting that stuff together. It's a lot of administration. It's and frankly, there's a lot of pitfalls and temptations to it. So you have to be a very strong, humble person to, I think, navigate that rightly and keep the main thing the main thing. And so pastors who do get into the podcasting world and stuff, I guess that would be my advice, is like, make sure that it's your congregation that you're focusing on. Yeah, and I know some guys who do this well, but there's a lot of pitfalls and temptations. I mean, it's a lot of time that it takes you're not shepherding an internet church, right? So yeah, I don't know if I'm trying to remember what your question was now. I don't know if that answers it.
Yeah, like what role will the internet play in all that sort of thing?
It's going to play a role. It's kind of like the public square. People are going there. So I think that yeah, I mean, if it's going to be someone who fills the shoes of a John MacArthur, you're going to probably be listening to them online. You're already listening to John MacArthur online, so I mean, the internet is inescapable. It's there, but there are some local churches that really don't have much of an online presence, and they are extremely impactful in the communities that they're in. And I think that is worth its weight in gold. That is far more. Yeah, I think when we go to heaven, the Lord is going to look at that far more than he is how many followers you had on YouTube or X or any of that. Like, he's not really going to care about those things as much as were you faithful with the tangible people that existed that he gave you to minister to.
Yeah. Kind of want to switch gears here. A few years ago, you had Jimmy Song on your podcast and you discussed Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's going back. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering, like, what are your thoughts about Bitcoin today, and what do you think?
I don't do anything in Bitcoin. I mean, you can donate to me in Bitcoin, but I decided to against it, and it's not anything against Bitcoin. I think there's tremendous opportunities. I was just talking to a friend of mine who's made probably, tens of thousands of dollars, just leaving a little bit of, he bought half of Bitcoin, like, I don't know, 12 years ago or something, and just kind of let it sit. I mean, there's downsides. Obviously, it's not tangible, and it's not, so it's not like a piece of property or a precious metal, where you can, if you can sell it and actually, like, you have something tangible there that you have purchased. It's really dependent on how much other people value Bitcoin, and and there's nothing really, I guess tangible is the only word I can come up with about it. But the argument I think Jimmy Song made, if I remember, it was basically like, look, your money's not really backed by anything either, except the government's good word and how people value it. So, why not Bitcoin? Bitcoin has blockchain technology. It sort of decentralizes money so that people who want to tax you and scam you and this and that, like, they have a harder time accessing this and getting to you. That's changing, obviously, though, because now the government can tax. They have the capability of taxing this. The government wants to get into cryptocurrency. So I think some of those, it's kind of like a lot of the new technologies like Lyft or Airbnb. Like, there are these sweet windows where the websites came out and you could go and stay in someone's house and not have to pay all these fees. And now, the county, the state, and the different regional elements, the town, perhaps, like they're all getting their cut. And I think that's probably the same thing that's going to happen with Bitcoin, is the government's going to get their cut. And you just, if you're going to be like paying attention to, I know guys who become millionaires basically like with Bitcoin, but they've had to pay attention so much. They're always looking at their phones, always seeing where the prices are at. And you just got to weigh, is that what you want to do, I suppose? So I weighed that all for myself. I tried to get into it. I actually lost a little bit of money. And I didn't put a lot of money in it, but I was just like, you know what, this is just it takes too much bandwidth for me to pay attention to where the prices are. And I don't know where it's going to go long term. So I didn't want to just put my money in and let it sit for years and years. And so I just decided to get into other things. And that's just me, though. I mean, Bitcoin might be the right thing for you. I mean, I don't know. Do you invest in Bitcoin or?
Well, I save in Bitcoin.
You save in Bitcoin. Okay.
Yeah, I don't use the term invest in Bitcoin because, like, I don't see it as like a traditional investment in that sense. There's a lot of Christians who are Bitcoiners because of like the ethics of money and the morality of money. I can't remember. It's been a while since I watched the whole episode of You and Jimmy, and it was a while ago. But I think one of the most compelling arguments is that, like, our money, money shapes a society. And Jordan Bush, he runs an organization called Thank God for Bitcoin, which Jimmy Song is also associated with. And there was one line in their book that kind of struck me that said, bad money incentivizes immoral behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Behavior builds immoral systems, and immoral systems lead to failing civilizations. And like, our money is bad. Our money in the United States is bad. It's not backed by anything. It can be printed like as much as they want to print, they can print. They could fund as many wars as they want to fund. They can steal through inflation your hard-earned wealth. And so, like, all of those go against what the Bible says. All of
Right.
those morals and those acts, like, and it's stealing from people. And I think with Bitcoin, it's you just have an honest money. Like, yeah, you said something that's not tangible, but tangibility doesn't necessarily isn't like the final thing that gives value. You know, what gives value is if something's durable, if it can be easily transferable, if it can get you what you want. Like the value in something is only realized when you're able to do something that you want with it. And so if you have $500,000 in cash, but you can't do anything with it because it's been devalued so far beyond being able to do anything with it, right? And you can look at other savings mechanisms with like real estate or gold. You know, where can you go with that? You're locked into one place. And, you know, here in America, we've never really had to do this, but like if you had to flee to another country, you can't take your house with you. You can't take your gold with you. You can't get on a plane and take your gold. And so I think Bitcoin is the internet of money. You know, like what podcasting and being able to film yourself and post it online did to the major corporate, like the media conglomerates like CNN. Like Joe Rogan can take a video on his phone and he can get more views than all of the mainstream media combined. Well, Bitcoin's going to do that same thing to the banks, and it puts people on equal playing field. And sure, governments can get their cuts, but at the end of the day, they still can't take it from you. They still can't produce more of it. So even if they achieved like 90% of the Bitcoin, I really don't care, because the sound money principles that Bitcoin adheres to, it's like we can just transact with the Bitcoin we have. You know, like Bitcoin, like gold in the past has been seized. You know, Executive Order 6102, Franklin Roosevelt, there was a mandatory buyback for gold. And then you have 1971 where Nixon decouples money from gold. And right then is when you have a huge skyrocket of immorality in this country. You look at the rates of abortion. 2 years later, you have Roe v. Wade, fatherlessness, single-parent households, two parents working. All of those can be sort of tracked to this moment where we severed our money from reality. And, I was just reading in Genesis when the people are coming to Joseph and they want grain, and they buy it with their money. And then they're trading their animals. Then they're trading their land. And there's a verse in there where it says like, our money is bad because the money has gone bad. Like they're not able to give money anymore. They have to trade their entire livelihood, and Egypt ends up getting all the land because the money was bad. And so, like, I just see tons of positive things for Bitcoin and like because the value is in the problem that it solves. Like, you have to understand what the problem is to appreciate the solution. And I think our money shapes us in more ways than we think.
Yeah, no, I think you make a compelling case for the importance of sound money principles and Bitcoin matching some of those things. I don't have any really disagreement with you. I think, a lot of the immoral things that happened in this country happened, a lot of Christian conservatives will say, well, when we took prayer out of schools, that was the thing. And it's like, I don't think there's one thing that was the thing. It was a lot of things happening at the simultaneously because we were immoral. It's like, that was the root, is like we were becoming a more immoral post-Christian society. And so, yeah, obviously getting off the gold standard, I think, is one of those things. And the Fed, I mean, I think it's an immoral thing that you have this organization that changes interest rates so often and can inflate money. So all of this stuff is problems. This is my own personal thing. I'm not saying for anyone else, but personally, I've just kind of come down on land and precious metals are where I want to save my money or park my value. I think there's more stability there. I mean, Bitcoin is very new, and there's still questions I have about where it's going to go eventually. There's a lot of new cryptos obviously out there. They have different principles depending on which crypto you're talking about. And you see the fluctuations quite a bit. Even with Bitcoin, there's a lot of fluctuation. It's the most stable, I'm assuming, of all of them. I think Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think, was the other one when I was looking, were like the two kind of more stable.
Ethereum, I'm glad you mentioned that, because like there's all these other altcoins, right? And
Yeah,
like they're really just scams. Bitcoin really is the only one. I like to say, like, there's only one Mona Lisa. You can't reinvent the wheel. Like you can make changes to the wheel. You can add new features to the wheel. You can say this one's better, but like of its nature, you can't change it. Like it is the purest embodiment of sound money that we've ever seen. And
I mean, you could have a cryptocurrency that matches all of the things. It's scarce. It's blockchain technology. It's all the rest. But people are, you have to persuade them that this is something they should buy.
Yeah, you're gonna have to persuade them, but you're also gonna have to have the same anonymity factors. Like you can't sue Bitcoin. You can sue the Ethereum Foundation. You can sue Ripple. You can take them to court. Like all of those other coins.
Are they all like that? There's no coin that's like Bitcoin in the same
ways?
ways?
I think Monero, like you don't, like it has a creator who's anonymous, and it's limited in supply, but it doesn't have the political capture. It doesn't have the global capture that Bitcoin has. Like Bitcoin is just so far ahead. Like that's why you won't hear a real Bitcoiner refer to Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency. There, you'll hear the language Bitcoin and crypto because it is deserving of a category of its own.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, look, you sound like you know a lot more about it than I do. Did the Jimmy Song thing get you into it?
No, I was already into it. And so like when you guys had a conversation, it was like, man, this is like perfect.
Yeah. You're probably disappointed that I haven't followed through on that really, but I did try for a few years. And, but I was doing like the whole not day trade, but like I had a friend who was like really into it and making money, but he was always on his phone and I couldn't really do that. And, I tried my best. And then when it skyrocketed so much in price, I decided I had already bought sort of top of the market, but it went even higher. And I was like, oh, it's going to keep going. And then it crashed. And then the ebbs and flows just were stressing me out as a person. And so I was like, you know what? I don't have the self-control to just let this stuff sit. I'm going to cash out. And I think most people probably, and maybe I'm dumb, like, right. Maybe it could be that I'm just not intelligent enough to, make money on Bitcoin, but like, I understand land. I understand precious metal. Like that it makes more sense to me. And those things can fluctuate obviously in value too. But, I like land especially is what I've been more attracted to lately. I want it because there's so many things with land. Like I can give that to my children. It can be something that land is something you're rooted in, you're attached to. There's things that you can't really put into words that happen on land. I mean, land can be cursed, land can be blessed. It carries memories with it. You can do a million different things with it. You can grow food if things go really bad. I mean, there's just so many things. And there's a lot of opportunities with land, obviously, in growing regions with all the great sort happening and people moving all over the place. So that's been sort of more my what
Yeah.
I've been getting into, my focus, I would say, is I was just surveying last week some potential land in another state that I was thinking of seeing if I could get a loan to purchase and rent out and that kind of thing. And so everyone's going to have their different thing, and saving dollars under your pillow is the worst thing you can do. But I respect guys like you who are able to do the Bitcoin thing and actually increase value. And so I'm for it in that sense. I'm just personally, I haven't chosen to invest in it anymore.
Yeah, I like land. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, my wife and I, we want to become homesteaders, and we want
Oh goodness, yeah.
a big plot of land where we can have a cow, chickens, and big garden. And so, like, and you have to live somewhere. Like, what is all of it for if you are homeless and you have a bunch of Bitcoin and your life sucks?
Right, right.
But like, I never check the price of Bitcoin. It's almost crazy, like, where I've sort of been desensitized to the price fluctuations. And it's interesting how there's like these parallels with like sanctification. Like, I'm not equating the two things at all, but there is like a maturation that like takes place where, like, I remember when I was checking my phone all the time. I was like, man, should I sell? Should I buy? But man, like, in Bitcoin, we use the term like low time preference and high time preference. And Christians actually have this because, it's, how do you view the present moment? Are we able to delay our gratification into the future so that way we can reap the benefits, right? And when you have a low time preference, it means you have a low view of the present moment. High view of the future, low view of the present. So you're able to delay instant gratification and reap the benefits later. And you have to do that with Bitcoin because, like, yeah, it's not a get rich quick overnight scheme. And you have to really think like years in advance. And then that mentality sort of bleeds into other areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of Bitcoiners who are Christians because they're able to have that discipline. There's a lot of Bitcoiners who are health conscious. And so there's a big overlap with people who are interested in Bitcoin, but then people who are interested in, carnivore and working out and Christianity and reading and all of these habits that require patience and just waiting. And over time, it kind of just, you grow desensitized to the price. And like, if Bitcoin pulled back to right now, it's like 60,000. I think if it went to like 65, like right now as we're talking, I really don't think I would care. I'd probably just buy more, to be honest. But
well, you're a believer, man. You're definitely invested in it.
you should talk to Jordan Bush from Thank God for Bitcoin. That'd be a really cool conversation because he was a former church planter and now he runs the Thank God for Bitcoin conference and he's written a couple books. And I just think it'd be a really cool conversation between you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for the recommendation.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
But anyways, man, we can start wrapping up here. Just really want to thank you for your time. Thank you for meeting with me, and thank you for the work that you do. And it's been a real encouragement to me.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Matthew. I appreciate having me on and having a discussion about these things.
Awesome. Well, have a good day, man. See you.
You too. God bless, brother.